Meeting to order and confirm that we have a quorum. I don't have the agenda in front of me. If somebody has the agenda, we can move on. I know we got to approve minutes from the March meeting.
Yes.
You should have received them.
I can read the opening statement to start us
Okay, if
off
you
as
would,
well.
I'd appreciate that.
Sure. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with emergency ordinance number 20-A16, an emergency ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The committee members who are electronically present at this meeting are Richard Hiss, Ron Brownfield, Stephanie Lowenhaupt. Did I say that right? Okay. Dick Ruffin, Ida Lee Wooten.
That's good.
Close, and Ann Oliver. The persons responsible for receiving public comment are the Pantops Community Advisory Committee. The opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County calendar. And county staff present at this meeting are Carolyn Schaefer, Gabe Daly, and Tori Kanelopoulos. I think I can turn it back over to you all now for approving the minutes.
Okay. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of our March meeting if there are no corrections or additions.
I move that the minutes be approved as
I second.
presented.
Thank you, Ida Lee and Ron.
I second it, yeah.
Raise your hand if you vote in favor. Okay, that's passed. Thank you. Next on the agenda, I believe, is the county presentation, is it not?
That's right.
Climate action.
Excuse me?
Good to jump. I wasn't sure if someone asked a question in there. Good to jump in. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
All right.
Jump in.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for having me. Appreciate the time. So my name is Gabe Daly, and my role with the county is as the Climate Protection Program Manager. So I am responsible for running our program, local government efforts to help engage in kind of local climate action, and got a little presentation that I'll run through some slides to share a few program updates with you, and also connect local climate action with the comprehensive plan update that I know folks are interested in and has just been kicked off. So I wanted to share a little bit about some of the intersections there. That was kind of the premise for which Tori and Rachel invited me to come to these CAC meetings in May. Before I dive in and open up my screen share to show you the slides, I wanted to just ask, and just feel free to popcorn in response, but I was just curious, so what's your first thought? The county climate person is here to talk to you all about local climate action. And I'm just kind of curious, like, what's the first thought that pops into your head at tonight's presentation?
School buses.
School buses, okay.
What initiative are you partaking to try to get to zero carbon by 2050?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
How long have you been involved in the project?
Okay.
Efforts to promote recycling and sustainability.
Great.
Electric as fast as we can on transportation.
Okay, electric and transportation. Great. Cool. And open to any thoughts you have, but also don't want to put you on the spot. So feel free, and then I can start.
Go ahead.
Oh, I can't hear you. It's weird. You unmute it. You're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
You can go ahead and get started, Gabe.
I'll get started and hopefully, so give a little presentation, And then we'll have some time for Q&A and discussion afterwards. So Anne definitely would love to hear what's on your mind if you want to share, and hopefully you can work out the kind of tech pieces as I go. All right, let me pull up the screen share. And is the presentation filling your screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Great. So thanks again for having me. Again, I'm the Climate Protection Program Manager, and I've been with the county in this role, in this formal role for about a year, May 2021. And then I've been working with the county in total about 2.5 years. So I started working in more of a kind of project contract position to help with the local government climate action work. So I'm going to cover a few topics tonight. Just say a couple of elements to frame the discussion. And then, like I said a minute ago, I'll share a brief program update about what we're working on with respect to local climate action. And then I'll draw some connections between our local climate work and the comprehensive plan update. And finally, I'll share a little bit about some ways that you all can get involved, as well as your friends and neighbors. So just to start by framing the discussion, I wanted to make 3 basic points that are not always talked about in the context of kind of governance and policy conversations, but there's more and more scientific research on the importance of just acknowledging that climate change is really big, touches on all aspects of our life and society. And so sometimes it can feel overwhelming, and that acknowledging whatever kind of emotional reaction folks have to climate change can be helpful and can help us move toward action. So just wanted to put that out there. If anybody has felt at any point in time nervous or worried about, what are we going to do about climate change? That's okay to feel that way. And you can be part of the solution. And it's been great going to the different CACs across the county this month, because, in particular, I think you all have a unique position in terms of being able to help the county be a leader, because as a CAC member, you have somewhat of a kind of community leadership position. So thank you for being part of that, and yeah, you can play an important role in the county's success. So I'll give a brief climate update about our program. And first, I'll start with just a little bit of background of what's gone on in the last couple of years, what has taken us to the present, and then I'll share a little bit about our ongoing efforts. So some of you might know that the county adopted a climate action plan in 2020, and this plan helps give us a kind of overall trajectory and pathway towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Local governments have been engaged in climate action planning for the last decade or so. It was something that a number of local governments started to do as part of their work in the late 2000s. And now it's a pretty common feature that localities across the country are realizing we have to both reduce our contribution to climate change and also prepare for the changes that are already here and that are on their way. Our climate action plan here in Albemarle tries to really be in line with the county's overall vision. And so we make sure to include these 4 key themes throughout the document that you see here. So we want to make sure that anything that we do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is also serving the local community, helping to create a more thriving, vibrant community for everyone who lives here. And so we're thinking about health and well-being, we're thinking about the local economy, the local environment, and equity and inclusion in the context of the strategies and actions that we are implementing. The plan, of course, is centered around reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and the Board of Supervisors set 2 targets in 2019. The first one is to reduce emissions by 45% from 2008 levels by 2030. And then the second one is to achieve 0 net emissions by 2050. So that was that term net zero that Stephanie mentioned in our opening conversation. These 2 targets are in line with standards that have been set and recommended by the international scientific community on greenhouse gas emissions. So you'll see these types of targets reflected quite often in different localities, cities and counties' climate action plans. The plan has 5 main areas of action in it. So 5 main areas that kind of group the strategies and actions for reducing our emissions. The first of those is transportation and land use. And that chapter includes land use because that can have such profound implications on how transportation works, how we can get around our community. There's a section on building energy use that looks at energy efficiency in buildings. That includes things like LED light bulbs to larger appliances like furnaces and hot water heaters. And it also looks at renewable energy generation on site. So most common example being rooftop solar panels. We also have a chapter that focuses on renewable energy sourcing at a somewhat larger scale. So kind of community scale to larger utility scale, and how we can try to promote that kind of renewable energy in the county and also do it in a way that is helpful and beneficial to the local environment. Then the additional two sections, we have one on sustainable materials management. So one of you mentioned being interested in recycling and composting. That chapter contains quite a bit on that topic. And then we have a chapter on landscape, natural resources and agriculture. So looking at how broadly our land management and forest and land stewardship in the county can help to reduce emissions and also increase sequestration, which is a technical term referring to how plants and soil can, if stewarded well, can bring carbon dioxide down from the atmosphere and store it in the soil. So this is just a visual of the county's first few years of greenhouse gas emission inventories, and then those future targets that I had shown 2 slides ago. So the county did a few greenhouse gas emission inventories in the 2000s, and then our most recent inventory was done in 2018. And a greenhouse gas emission inventory is basically what it sounds like. It's taking an inventory of the emissions that are produced in a given year across the community, from all the driving that happens, heating our homes and buildings and things like that. So what you can see here, a couple of things just to point out so you have a sense of where we are. The green dot that's just at the end of the orange line was the 2018 inventory. And you can see that there was a slight reduction in emissions from the previous inventory that was done in 2008. So that's a good sign. There's some movement in the right direction. We want this chart to be going down. And then the dashed green line is an idealized line of what emissions reduction could look like moving towards those 2 targets in 2030 and 2050. So you can see here that we've been moving in the right direction, and we need to steepen that downward slope in the years to come. The 2018 inventory was before the county had a climate action plan. So that reduction in emissions was due to largely broader kind of regional and national factors related to fuel efficiency and the electrical grid. And so we're hoping that the fact that now we have a climate action plan to help us take more strategic action here in Albemarle will help us to, like I said, steepen that downward slope. Currently, what we're working on is we have 2 main channels or 2 main streams of work in the county's climate protection program. On the left is implementing that climate action plan that we have. So the climate action plan has something like 135 distinct action areas across those 5 sectors: transportation, buildings, et cetera. So we're looking to implement that. And then another area of action is making sure that we as local government are leading by example. So we're engaged in work to look at our own sustainable operations, policies and procedures, and how we can help to make those more sustainable, help make them greener, so to speak. And we're working on an update to our greenhouse gas emission inventory. The climate action plan commits us to doing a new inventory every 2 years. So currently we're preparing the data to be able to release an inventory for 2020 this year. And I'll mention, because you might be wondering, well, it's 2022, why are we working on the 2020 inventory? There's always a 2-year lag, roughly, between when we can produce a report and the year in question that report is about. And that has to do with when certain data sets become available that we have to use. And those are provided by the state government in some cases and the federal government in other cases. The other big channel of our climate program is climate adaptation and resilience planning. So just to define a few terms for you, our climate action plan focuses, the one that was adopted in 2020, focuses on what's often referred to as mitigation. And mitigation basically means reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and hopefully reducing the severity of climate change. Adaptation and resilience, the terms on the right, basically recognize that there's a certain amount of climate change that at this point has been baked in. We're already experiencing the effects now, and we're likely to see more of those in terms of increasingly extreme weather like heat and precipitation. And so we know that we need to prepare for that, make sure that our community can build resilience to those kinds of increasingly severe weather events and seasonal disruption. So that's another big piece of what we're working on, and we're about to launch a planning process to do that builds on a vulnerability and risk assessment we've been conducting over the last year. It's also about to be released, shared with the Board of Supervisors and shared with the community. So I thought very briefly, I won't go into all the details of this, but I just wanted to give you all a visual of those kind of two main streams of our climate work at the county. There's a lot going on. It's quite a bit to manage, but it's also really good and important work. So the green on top is just showing you some of those different elements of the implementation of our climate action plan. And one of the things that I didn't mention on the last slide that's really important about what we're doing is strategically prioritizing how we can implement the climate action plan. So I said that it has 135 actions. That's a lot to take on. And so we're working to help refine how we look at those actions and how we can implement them in the most strategic way possible. And then on the bottom, you can see the connection between the vulnerability assessment we've just done and how that's going to inform our planning process, and ultimately a companion plan will be a climate resilience plan. So we're excited to be kicking off that planning process soon, and we're looking forward to a robust community engagement effort in that. And so certainly hope that if you're interested, you all can be a part of that. So now I want to turn to speak briefly about some intersections between climate action and the comprehensive plan update. And like I mentioned at the very beginning of the call, that was the purpose, or the timing right now of May 2022 was kind of the pretext for why Rachel and Tori invited me to come to the different community advisory committees this month, as because the comp plan update process just kicked off, and there's some important intersections between climate action and comprehensive planning. The Board of Supervisors has been aware of those and has really been pushing other staff to think about the importance of climate action in all of the work that we do as a local government. So I've talked a little bit about our greenhouse gas emission inventory, and I wanted to start off there because it helps us think about the intersections with comprehensive planning. So the pie chart on the right is from 2018 and shows the breakdown of those different topical areas, the sectors of emissions. Stationary energy refers to buildings. So understanding how this pie is sliced helps us think about how we can integrate climate action plan into the comprehensive plan. This chart is the same one, just has slightly different colors. But I wanted to start with transportation because, as you can see from here, transportation is a pretty big slice of the pie. It's actually slightly over 50%. So it's a big one. A lot of cities in the country tend to have the building sector is larger than transportation, sometimes larger than 50%. So we're a little different in that regard. But when you think about it, Albemarle County is a really large geographic area with a large rural area. And so our transportation emissions are likely to be higher because folks have to drive further, maybe to commute to work into the city. So let's start with transportation. And if any of you took a look at this great report, if you haven't, definitely check it out. But Tori and Rachel prepared a growth management background report a couple of weeks ago, and that's on the Engage Albemarle website for the comprehensive plan update. It had this chart in it, which when I was looking through the report, this caught my eye. I thought it was really interesting and wanted to take this as a starting point for transportation. First off, you can see on the left, this is a table, by the way, if you can't see the smaller text on the bottom. This is means of transportation to work in Albemarle County. So people's commuting from home to work during the week between 2015 and 2019. So you can see 3/4 of folks drove alone to work, which is worth paying attention to. Another number that I'll show you briefly on the right that's interesting. Again, this survey was between 2015 and 2019. 8.5% worked from home. We know that number spiked significantly in 2020 and 2021 due to COVID. Perhaps that number, while it's probably dropped quite a bit since the spike, perhaps it'll stay somewhat higher as different kind of work environments have adapted and changed somewhat the notion of the new normal. So maybe more folks are working from home now. I also wanted to highlight these numbers in the middle, which are all quite low. And so as someone who's working in the field of climate action, those three are numbers that I'm interested in thinking about. How can we increase those percentages by making it more possible for folks to choose public transit, walking and biking? What barriers exist to those means of transportation that maybe we can lower some of those barriers through the work of my program? And then connecting this to comprehensive planning, the question that's often in my mind is how can growth management and land use decisions help us increase those percentages? So I'm just going to put out a few ideas, and this is not, these are not formal proposals. These are kind of food for thought, just to get the conversation going and give us some things to think about, talk about. These are some ways that when I think about how to incentivize or reduce barriers to those kinds of transportation that are lower or zero emissions, this is some of what comes to mind. So a complete street is the idea of a street that has comfortable transportation for cyclists and pedestrians as well as cars, and not just for safety, but also having trees, having greenery, so it's a pleasant and maybe not too hot if it's a summer day and you're biking to run errands or something like that. Density and mixed use are often talked about in the context of climate action as ways to help people move around in ways that have a lighter footprint. So, if you can have mixed use development where folks can get more easily to a store to run an errand or pick up some eggs if they realize they run out of eggs in the middle of the week and they don't have time to go to the store for, like a supermarket that might be further away. We also talk about infill development, which is when there's maybe unused parking lots or land that's been abandoned that's well within the development areas. Is there opportunity to add affordable housing into a space like that, for example? And then broadly, sometimes we think about the way in which we devote often as a society so much real estate to parking. I'm always amazed sometimes when I go shopping and the parking lot might be half full, and then I go inside and the stores are very busy. And it gets me thinking about how much space is required for parking, for example, and can some of that maybe be given to more robust and complete transit, bike, and pedestrian infrastructure? So these are just some ideas. Would love to chat further with you about them. I also wanted to talk briefly about buildings, since you can see a pretty large slice of the pie. And another question that comes to mind for me is, how can the comprehensive plan promote things like electrification? So moving from gas-powered appliances, let's say, to more electric appliances. How can the comp plan better promote solar energy systems, adaptive reuse of existing buildings, rather than necessarily tearing a building down? And the comprehensive plan, of course, defines broad language for what the county wants to prioritize. So it's not necessarily going to build in the incentives itself, but the comp plan is really important for then when there is an update to the zoning ordinance or other aspects of the county code. And so it can help set important vision for those other kinds of governance documents. I know that I think, Idly, you were interested in waste. And so I don't have that built into this presentation just because it's kind of a small slice here. But if you have questions about it, let's definitely talk about it in the discussion afterwards. This was prepared in advance and I skipped that section for the sake of time, but let's come back to it. I did want to just highlight something about agriculture, in part because agriculture looks like it's not very important here because it's a small slice. For our emission inventory, we focus on livestock emissions, but what is kind of behind the scenes here is the county's forest and tree cover. So this is a map of county tree cover from either 2016 or 2018. It was an appendix in our greenhouse gas emission inventory from 2018. And so the county's forests are actually helping us quite a bit. They're sequestering a lot of carbon. And so one way that thinking about growth management and comprehensive planning can help us in this regard is making sure that this sequestration can continue through conservation and good stewardship practices. And then perhaps where possible in the development areas, increasing our tree canopy to help with carbon sequestration, but also to help with the urban heat island effect. So that was some intersections, and happy to talk about that more. In my last couple minutes of presenting, I just wanted to mention a few ways that you all can get involved. First one is wanted to share a pretty cool project that several colleagues and I recently worked on. This project came out of the Stream Health Initiative that you might have heard about. My colleagues in community development have been behind that. And we came together at their initiative to create a hub on the county website, which is a really easy to access place for residents to be able to, and folks who work in the community, basically to learn more about county environmental stewardship programs, like the 4 that are listed here, and then also learn about resources that for community members to act at home on your land, if you happen to have a larger amount of land, and more broadly in your community. So I'm just gonna toggle over screens for a second, just to show you what this actually looks like. This is the Environmental Stewardship Hub. One of the reasons that we made this is that if you 6 months ago wanted to learn more about climate action in the county or what the county is doing to promote clean water, you would have had to go to different places on our website and often click in several web pages deep to be able to find the information that you were looking for. We wanted to make it easier to access, so we put everything here on a page that if you go up to this community tab, right here under learn more about, it's just a single click to get to this environmental stewardship hub. So if you're interested in the county's programming, you can click more on these links. And then if you scroll a little further down, we have this slider of different ways that you can make a difference. Like I said, at home, in your community, or on your land. And if I click in one, just to show you what's here, you'll see a long list of different ideas of things that you might do at home if you feel inspired. We tagged them by the different kind of broad goals that they tend to support. If I click on something like solar, you'll see this one really focuses on climate action. And what we did for each one of these sections is we made sure to try to keep the description short so it's accessible and not a wall of text. And we included links to local, state, and national resources that if you feel really serious about something like installing solar panels, we give links where you can find information about how to go about it, and also information about rebates or cost share resources that might be available to help do that. So definitely check this out. This was a lot of fun to create. There's a lot of work to create. We hope it'll be helpful and useful for community members to get ideas and also to be able to access resources, both technical and also cost share, to help with something that you might feel excited to try out. Last 2 slides. Again, just reiterating that we're excited to be releasing our climate vulnerability and risk assessment in the next month. And we're excited to be starting the planning process of doing climate adaptation and resilience planning. So look out for more communication on ways to get involved. And want to plug for my colleagues who, Tori and Rachel, who are the principal staff behind the comprehensive plan update. They have this great website. This will be linked in the slides that you were sent, where you can check out the ways to get involved and engage in the comp plan update process. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for listening and checking out what I had to share. Happy to take questions, hear comments, explore different aspects of this that you might want to know more about.
Ron Brownfield.
Yeah, are you promoting this through the public school systems and trying to educate, children and with the overall ideas?
Yeah,
That-
great question. So there's two ways that we're collaborating with schools. One is that there are actions in the plan to engage with schools at a level of education and partnering with teachers to help increase education on climate change with students. So we've had some initial pilot work in that regard. I've begun to collaborate with some great colleagues in schools. And then the second way that we're working on it is partnering with them on aspects of the school's operations, since some of those are managed separately from local government. So with that section that I shared around the sustainable operations policies and procedures, we're also working with schools to see how we can partner and collaborate on their efforts to do the same. I know that I think, Ron, you might have been the one who asked about school buses. So they've procured 2 electric school buses. And the last I heard, in the last few months, they were also looking for additional grant money to be able to procure at least 2 more, if not 3 or 4 additional school buses. So hoping to be able to transition the school's fleet to electric as soon as we can. Last thing I'll say is that there's recently was formed a advisory committee on environmental sustainability for schools that has a school board member, a member of the county board of supervisors, a number of community members, and a few staff to kind of help guide that process of schools implementing their side of the climate action plan.
Dick here, am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Yeah. As with many things, it's so much easier to get it on paper than to do it, and very hard to get our communities, the people, actually paying attention to what looks like a brilliant website. This Environmental Stewardship Hub looks great. So how many people will access that in the course of a month? 5, 10, 15? Not 500. So I guess I'm asking, in a way, B, what could be done to really lift the climate action planning into the public mentality? I don't say that right, but it's kind of almost like a media campaign is needed. When it catches on with people, it can be very important. But right now, I'm sure if I asked 50 people, I probably would not find one that's ever found this Environmental Stewardship Hub, and yet it looks great. And I want to get onto it and use it. But it's maybe, Ron, you've got some ideas, but somehow we've got to get people going to the county site to get these resources. How do we do that?
I have a couple thoughts, but I know you also invited Supervisor Locusto-Kirtley. I don't know if there's anything you want to say first, and then I'm happy to chime in with some of what we're thinking about on the staff level.
Oh, Gabe, I'd actually like to hear what you have to say. And Dick, in reference to your question, a lot of these things, unfortunately, center around incentives for people to do it. I was even thinking of the electric appliances versus the gas appliances. Maybe there could be some kind of a reduction or a special tax. And I don't think we can even do that. That's the state would have to give us permission. But it has to do with, you have to hit people in the pocketbook. And I'm hoping, like with carpooling, maybe that's something that we can do by providing, maybe not permanent, but temporary sites to allow people to carpool, especially now that gas is so expensive, and maybe coordinate with UVA. The biggest employers are UVA and the county. Coordinate that somehow to have some carpool places where they could just carpool and save a lot of money. But I'd like to hear what Gabe has to say too.
Sure. Thanks for mentioning the incentives piece. That is really important. So a couple thoughts, and I'll circle back to that one. So Dick, one thing is that, we certainly don't expect folks to just find this area of the website on their own. And so we started with creating it so that it's accessible on the website. But our plan is to use it as a basis for more communication and education outreach work that staff are planning to do and that the Climate Action Plan calls on us to do. So it's like it's there as a resource, and then we can make use of it to do some of our outreach campaigns that we're planning to do. Also, we launched it. It's fairly new. We launched it on Earth Day, so it's been around a few weeks, and there's a lot of opportunity to make good use of it. One of the things that comes to mind with the, well, let me say also, there are explicit actions in the Climate Action Plan that say things like, run a education campaign in the community around this set of topics. So that's something that we have in the plan that gives us some guidance on what we can do.
Yeah.
There's like several different, the best way I've put this with folks is there's several different verbs in the Climate Action Plan, you might say, relating to the different kinds of actions that we can take. And so if you read actions in the plan, you'll see actions that start out with language like educate or promote or encourage. And those center around opportunities to partner with schools and also opportunities to do outreach campaigns in the community to make folks aware of where there are existing resources or where there are things that folks might do if they feel inspired but they don't know about it yet. That's where those kind of the promote and encourage actions come in. We also have actions that say incentivize or look at opportunities to help shift incentives that to what Supervisor LaPista-Kirtley was just saying. And I think part of our work too is to look for opportunities, like I mentioned on one of the slides. Are there places where maybe we have disincentives or barriers for things that we could remove if possible? Sorry about the background noise. And then we do have some actions that look at updating policy language in county governance documents. And so how can we be more explicit in the comprehensive plan update about climate action and some of the things that we would like to set as goals and prioritize? And then how can that inform updates to the zoning ordinance or other parts of the county code for the specific areas where we might have some capacity to do that. The last thing I'll say is that that's part of the current effort where we're looking to update the goals in the climate action. So the climate action plan has targets, the reduction targets, and then there's goals for each of the chapters or sections, and then there's strategies and actions. And currently the goals have language that say things like, increase the amount of renewable energy generation in the community, or increase, bicycling and walking, for example. But we would like to make the language of those goals smarter in the sense of the SMART acronym that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, because that'll help hold us more accountable, and it'll also help us implement more strategically. So we can use those SMART goals to prioritize actions that'll make the biggest difference sooner and perhaps do those first.
What are those 5 things in the SMART goals?
Oh,
Measurable?
yeah, specific, measurable,
Yeah.
achievable,
Yeah.
relevant, and time-bound. In our case, the goals that we'll be setting are certainly relevant. What we're thinking about, particularly at the moment, are the specific and time-bound. So making sure that a goal is saying, try to reduce this much by this date, or increase this specific activity, by this date, so that we can then look back and say, were we able to achieve that? Oh, sure. And then I had, by the way, I had seen Corey's hand up from a few minutes ago. So Dick, go ahead, but I just wanted to note, I don't know if the moderator had seen that.
Can you identify a few biggies where big gains could be made fairly quickly if we focus on it? I take an analogy to cleaning up nuclear waste sites, for example. You can spend $1 billion to get the last 50% of one that's in bad shape, but spend that same $1 billion on the 10 worst and make much more progress. And sometimes people tend to go to try to finish off something and get that last 1%, 2%. I mean, my building is very good on that, just because it's got glass that keeps the heat in and the cold out. But a lot of places, I mean, this is not a good example, but when they presented recently on Southwood trailers, that area of Southwood, the amount of energy used to keep a trailer warm in winter is phenomenal. You know,
Yeah.
what they do in one trailer probably would keep us for the whole winter, and they might use it for a week because it's such its design is very weak. So are there areas in the county that you've identified that we could make big gains with a sharp focus on those serious issues?
That's a great question. In terms of big picture, just giving quantitative ranking of that, that's the work that we're doing right now to do kind of a cost benefit scoring of the actions in the climate action plan. So I don't want to speculate too much about the different actions while we're mid process there. But I think the last example that you gave is a good one that's like a win-win-win for the county, which is we have actions in the plan around helping the community move forward with weatherization, energy efficiency, and electrification. And that's important because we know that the electric grid is becoming cleaner over time. The county can take steps to help with that effort with renewable energy, but we know the grid's getting cleaner. And so if we can help folks make their energy use at home more efficient and also transition to electricity, that's a big win for greenhouse gas emissions. It can also be a big win for folks' pocketbooks and comfort at home. So two sirens coming on the street right by my house. Sorry about that. So the other piece of that is we're working with partner organizations, the Local Energy Alliance Program, LEAP, and Albemarle Housing Improvement Program, AHIP, that do really great work in the community, often working with folks at lower income levels to help do energy efficiency improvements in their homes. And that's important because it helps with the climate goals. It can help reduce folks' home energy bills. And it can also increase comfort at home, especially if there's, someone's living in an older house that's drafty. And, if we can help them seal cracks and better insulate so the energy use goes further.
We have Stephanie and Corey that have their hands raised. So Corey, you want to go ahead?
Let Stephanie go first, if you don't mind. Always ladies first.
Okay. All right, Stephanie.
Thank you, Corey. Just a couple of questions, I guess. First of all, Dick was talking about educating people and educating the community. Have you thought about trying to work through like neighborhood associations and community organizations and letting them know and letting them engage with their group of people? So sometimes face-to-face and more of a small group type situation might educate people a little bit more, get them more interested. I'm not sure if you've thought about that. You may have already.
That's a great idea. It's something we need to do more of. I hope, I guess in part, I'm seeing tonight's meeting and similar meetings I've been doing this month as sort of in line with that idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to your point, it's something that I think we can do more of. And I had a colleague, just to give an example of an idea that was talked about, we haven't yet implemented it, but a colleague of mine was saying that a homeowners association had reached out to him with interest in doing a training on how they could best manage invasive species on
Right.
the common areas of that HOA. And we started talking about that as a team of, well, what a great idea could be to develop a training like that, or maybe a training on something else that HOAs might have some agency to take action on and also interest in, and then pilot something that then could be advertised to other community groups. So I think you're right on point. It's a really good suggestion.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention was following up on what B said about the increased price of gasoline and carpooling type things. I know in outlying counties, there are kind of van pool type things where people can park in the central parking lot and a van or something picks them up to take them to their place of employment, wherever that happens to be. Just wondering if there's more consideration for the county to do that as far as maybe different north, south, east, west of Albemarle County have a central location. People could bring them into a central location for transportation.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not the staff person working directly on this, so I can't give too many details, but you might have heard there's the micro transit pilot that
Right.
staff and community development.
Right.
And that's right. Pantops is one of the places where that's going to be piloted. So
Right.
I think that's one opportunity. There's also the TJPDC, the Planning District Commission, has some kind of a rideshare program. I don't know how well used it is, but we have an action in the climate action plan that says to work with the PDC to increase the usage of that program. So that's kind of one of the items on our to-do list to look into and see what opportunities for growth there might be there.
Thanks. I think that was basically what I wanted to cover. So I'm following up on those two things.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Corey, it's your turn.
Oh, thank you, Madam Clerk. Hey, Gabe, this was a great presentation. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. And I just want to make a couple of points that are probably already on the radar for the county as you're working through the climate action plan. The first is just the importance of engaging the right folks at the right time. I remember on one of your slides, you had, transportation and buildings are, the biggest contributors in our county. And for example, with buildings, there's just a whole host of architects that could probably lend their expertise, right, in this conversation as you're working through. And then also with climate action planning, you're playing the long game. And I think a lot of it is actually only really done by policy to be most effective, right? And so making sure that our state elected officials for this particular district are aware of our vision and where we're trying to go. We all understand that the General Assembly has different undercurrents at different times. Sometimes it's more susceptible to embrace this kind of conversation than others. But since we're playing the long game, just always keeping this in front of them, particularly like Delegate Hudson and our state senators and so forth, on your vision. And then lastly, just the importance of making sure that our goals complement our neighbors like Charlottesville and UVA, and that we're all reaching for the same thing, because even though we're different localities, as you're aware, we all touch one another in various aspects of our life, live, work, and play. And so just understanding what their climate action goals are and just making sure there's synergies there. Just want to make those 2 points, but thank you for the presentation.
Thanks, Corey. Those are great points. The first two are excellent suggestions that I took notes on and will follow up with. And then in terms of the last one, I do have a every other week or so meeting with my counterparts at the city, the climate program manager there, and then the UVA sustainability office director. And so we have good communication about some of what's going on. That said, I also think there's more room for the kind of collaboration that you're talking about, especially because, it's like it has to, if we're going to be effective, like you said, long game, and also really collaborating across departments in our institutions, because there's so many different people whose work touches on this, just like, Tori's working on the comprehensive plan, and that intersects with climate. So I think there's opportunities for more of the kind of collaboration you're talking about. But it's good that we have, we do at least have some kind of staff across institutions that do connect somewhat regularly.
That's awesome. And I'm happy to be an instrument to help you with some of those connections, particularly to the architectural community. I'm an architect by training, so feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to make those connections.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will. Yeah, I'd like to follow up for a conversation.
Okay. Does the electrical grid have the capacity to meet the increased demand that you're projecting? Or are we looking at a major investment in additional electricity generation in order to match up with your increasing use of electricity as the fuel of choice?
That's a great question. I can say a few things about that. And I know that a lot of the work on that level is at the utility level. So yes, there will be increasing, right? So if we're gonna try to electrify, because electric appliances and electric vehicles are more energy efficient than the internal combustion counterparts, the fossil fuel counterparts, then that means, right, more pulling electricity on the grid. We're also, and you'll see more about this in the climate, the vulnerability and risk assessment that is forthcoming. You know, we're also looking at increasingly intense and longer heat waves in the summers. Of course, you know, coming off of this weekend of just having a weekend of like 96 degrees in May is a little chilling, figuratively speaking. So, you know, so there's also going to be increasing, we expect to see increasing draws on the grid because of the kind of local and regional climate changes. So you're absolutely right. And that means there will need to be increase in capacity. My understanding is that there will both need to be increases in capacity of generation, like you said, and then also increases in resilience on the transmission system itself and like the power lines and the kind of delivery mechanism. So there is certainly a need to do that. And we have some actions that speak to increasing generation capacity in the climate action plan. And so that's in our renewable energy chapter. We look at how we can increase the generation capacity of our grid here. And then in terms of the transmission piece and delivery piece, that may be something that more utilities will work on and will kind of fall under their, you know, the systems that they manage, the grid itself. But yeah, it's a good point and definitely something that will need work, will need investment.
Well, I know in Eastern Massachusetts, when they wanted to use Canadian hydroelectric power, they couldn't get the lines approved to go through New Hampshire and Vermont to bring that power from Canada down into Eastern Massachusetts. So the whole program fell apart because of the landowners who didn't want power lines running across their forests and their fields. And so the whole program died. And then they had the natural gas program. They ended up without sufficient natural gas, so they brought it in liquid tankers from Russia. And that's how they got through the winter because they didn't have the gas resources to stand the cold weather. I'm just thinking that somebody has got to be thinking the real long term if you want your short-term actions to be as beneficial as they can be. Anyone else?
Ida Lee, was there anything that you wanted to talk about? I know we haven't chatted about as much with the waste piece, but I didn't want to forget about that point if you wanted to come back to it.
The agenda is open for any questions that anybody wants to raise.
I'm fine, Gabe. Thank you so much.
Well, in absence of any further questions, I also want to thank you, Gabe, for an excellent presentation. And I'm sure the county will find ways of keeping us engaged and up to date and helping the program grow.
Yes, I have a question and actually involves Ann, because I know she's in real estate. How hard would it be if developers, when they build houses, if the back half of a house were solar panels? I mean, is that something, that in which case there'd maybe be an incentive for the builder or for the homeowner to go that way?
And we can't
hear you, Ann.
we can't hear you. It's weird. It's same. Your Zoom says you're unmuted, but it might be your microphone setting.
We can't hear you, Ann.
If you and in the lower left of your screen where you see the mute button, there might be a little caret arrow facing up. If you click that little arrow, it could be where it says under select a microphone. You might need to select a different microphone than the one that's selected. I know that happens to me sometimes.
It would need to be the one that says real tech.
She's not seeing it. Okay, well, maybe that's a county question we can look into. What do you think, Gabe?
Yeah. Well, Ann, I'm so sorry not to hear from you, but I at some point would love to have a conversation. I think to the question, definitely looking at ways where we can try to incentivize developers to install solar, in the development is something that would be great to do. And we have some actions in the plan that look at that. And to the extent that that's something that's possible. For one example, that could be something we could use is the CPACE financing, which is the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program that the state has. They don't have it for residential, but it might be, it's possible that it could be relevant kind of at the initial stages of like a large development. So it's not accessible to an individual homeowner, but that kind of a program can help to defray some of the extra costs upfront for the developer that then ideally would help to not necessarily make the cost of the price of the units prohibitive for the folks who would ultimately be buying them. So looking at things like that is definitely
thinking of a large development. I'm thinking of Southwood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just thinking when you thought about that too, B, was just the fact of I know that for commercial buildings like the EVA and stuff, they have a green building certification, that kind of thing for big commercial buildings. But Dave, there's nothing related to residential as far as making some certification for a green housing or that kind of thing.
That specific program, the state has not allowed the residential side of it, but I think there's other tools that we could have in our tool belt around looking at how we can partner with developers to move more in that direction.
Okay, thank you.
I believe something, can you hear me?
Yeah.
When I was in California, they were talking about, and I think they did pass a state law where every new house above a certain size had to be wired to accept solar panels, not necessarily install them. They had to be wired, which is a significant part of the cost. It's one way to do it.
Thanks for that.
Any question? Am I okay being heard? This is Dick.
Hey, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Someone in our neighborhood has recently installed solar panels. He's very pleased, and he's made some estimates as to how soon this will pay off in terms of his reduced bills. I wonder if it would be worth collecting 5 or 10 examples from residents who've invested in solar panels on their roofs and can say, maybe prove, that they have saved, in 4 years, they've saved more money with their solar than they had to spend on its installation. But just to get the word out, the few people who know about this guy, say, I think I may do that too, because it's going to pay off.
I know that with some of the with thanks for that suggestion, Dick. I know that with some of the rebates currently in place, the LEAP, the organization I mentioned a little bit ago, has a current campaign going on, Solarize Virginia, where they're trying to take advantage of some of the rebates that are currently in place that might decrease next year. And so on the Environmental Stewardship Hub that's linked in the PowerPoint presentation you have, if you click on that Go Solar, the one that I showed is the example on the website, that one has a link to LEAP's Solarize program. So, you know, if that's of interest. And I see it looks like you're on your phone.
Yes, I switched over. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Whoa.
yay.
So I did have a question. I was wondering, you mentioned the University of Virginia, and I wonder if you've had a conversation with them, because I know that they leave a huge footprint with regards to greenhouse gas emissions and so forth. And I noticed that whenever I drive by the university, their stadium lights are on 24 hours a day, basically. I'm just wondering if you've had a conversation with them about what they're doing.
That's an interesting question. I've noticed that myself driving by.
Okay.
And certainly I've certainly wondered. I know too, you know, just the city and county both have the dark skies, you know, kind of initiative or priority. That's something that we value here. I can, having moved here from DC, I can definitely say it's nice to be able to see stars in the night sky. So that's a good question, and I'm happy to ask my colleagues about it. I don't know, you know, there could be kind of explanation around different competing interests, the university sustainability goals, and then goals of athletic departments and stuff like that. You know, I don't want to speak for them in terms of the reasoning, but I can definitely ask about it. I will say from some of their bigger picture work, UVA has definitely been a leader in terms of their emissions reductions. So I know that I think they had a goal for 2020 that they met in 2018. And they've set some ambitious targets that they've made good progress towards in terms of they're looking to be net zero by 2030 and fossil fuel free by 2050. So there is some really good work going on at UVA that I've been briefed on. But I'm happy to ask about that question with the you know, both the lights on in terms of energy use and also the you know, light pollution.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, if you all have more business to take care of, I'm happy to head out. But thanks so much, Richard, for your words a few minutes ago, and thanks everybody for your questions and comments. I've jotted some things down to follow up on. And yeah, I appreciated the opportunity, and maybe can come back sometime for an update.
Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you,
Thank you
Gabe.
so much.
Very good presentation. We appreciate your effort and your time spent on it.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Okay. Well, I'd like to move on to the next items on our agenda. And I don't have the agenda in front of me, but from memory, I know one of the issues I wanted to raise was membership. We're 3 people short in our committee right now. We have 3 more people that go off the board on June 30th, including myself. I'm term limited, so I cannot continue. The other 2 folks, and Ron, I think you're one, you have the opportunity to sign up because you're not term limited by 3 years.
Yeah, I already did.
You already did. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So we have a challenge to keep the committee relevant and serving the total community. And I would hate to see us kind of shrink down and not be as significant to the community as we've been in the past 4 or 5 years. The other issue I want to raise is the election of officers. We need a new slate of officers to start July 1st. We need a chair of the committee, and we need a secretary and a vice chair. I spoke with Dick Ruffin, and Dick has agreed that he will be a candidate for chair. And I appreciate that very much. I don't know that anyone else has a desire to serve in any of the 3 committees for the coming year.
I will say that I would be interested, but I'd like a little bit more detail about what each committee is designed for. Is there like some information online that would describe the responsibilities and what's expected from each committee?
I'm not able to answer that. Can you, B or Carolyn, answer
Are we
that?
talking about the committee? We're talking about the positions, because there's the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary.
I thought I was referring to committees, actually. I thought, what, are we talking about committees? Or are we talking about chairs?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about committees.
Okay. I'm not sure, Richard, what you mean by other committees.
Well, we have the Pantops committee, and that's all I'm talking about is
Oh, yeah,
the
no.
officers.
Yeah, and this is just about the Pantops CAC.
Oh, God, yes.
And then within the Pantops CAC, we have officers. And that's all our charge is.
Okay, good. I thought he said committees. That's why I was a little bit confused. Okay,
He did.
Got
That's
it.
what I wanted to clarify.
Got it.
Yeah. So would you be willing to serve as one of the officers?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Good. Okay. We need one more, and then we have our 3. Carolyn, I think there's only 3. Is that correct?
3 officers, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. We might want to wait till Rachel's at the meeting. We can wait and elect officers really in July.
Right.
But yeah, there's the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary. That's correct.
Got it. Okay. And then I would ask each one of you to try to encourage somebody you know that would be able to join the Pantops CAC. I think this is a very important committee. We've all gotten along well. I will tell you, it looks like the state has changed their mind, and we will probably have to go in person. I believe it's going to be in September.
Yes.
It looks
September.
like we're going to have to be in person. Hopefully we can get a location in Pantops to be able to hold our meetings. But yes, it would be very, very nice if you all can try to recruit some people. I think you know people in the neighborhood, and it's good to have a mix, and because it's always worked well for us. So
Well, the meetings are the 4th Monday of the month, typically beginning at 6:15 for an hour and a half.
Yes.
In years past, before Zoom meetings, we met at the Martha Jefferson Hospital in their very nice conference room in that first building on the right next to the workout gym that's there on that first floor as well.
ACAC, right.
And we've typically had a member from the hospital as a Pantops committee member. And he hasn't been active in the last couple of months. I don't know his status. But that's one that you should reach out to in terms of, they're such a major force here in the county.
Oh, yes,
We should have them represented
definitely.
on the Pantops committee.
Do you know who that person was?
I'd have to pull up my,
It's Michael Spatz is what
yeah,
I
that's who
show.
it is. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so maybe we can go ahead. Carolyn, maybe you can send me the information. I can reach out to Michael Spatz and ask him if he'd like to be on the committee or to apply. I don't know if he's.
He's
His
he's
term
been on
doesn't-
the committee.
his
To
term
my
doesn't-
knowledge, he has not resigned.
Okay,
Yeah.
But
His
we
term
cannot
doesn't end
pay-
until the June 30th, 2023, according to my list.
oh, okay, okay. Well, then if he's there, if you send me the information, I will, make contact with him, and then we can also see if we can get that room next to the ACAC for our meetings.
That's always been a very good meeting room for us.
Yes. It's very convenient, I think, for all of us.
B, are there residential qualifications?
Pardon?
Are there residential qualifications? Do you have to live within what's called the Pantops?
I will tell you for CAC 29 North, I have the principal of Baker Butler who doesn't live in, he lives in Scottsville, not in Rivanna, but I think he lives in Scottsville. Anyway, he doesn't live in the Rivanna district, but he's on there because he's, he has an interest. He's the principal of Baker Butler. So, it would depend if they have some kind of interest, like a business or work here or something like that.
We've always had residents, as I recall, that were Pantops Mountain residents.
Right. But it might not be bad an idea to have someone from the business community.
Well, I'm thinking of somebody who lives in Key West, who's in business
That's in Rivanna.
and is quite informed about transportation. I wonder whether.
That's in our area. That's Pantops.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is Pantops, because I live in Key West, and that's part of Pantops.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, is it? Well, I'll reach out to this guy and see whether he would be interested, and let you know, B.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And we need to get, the board only approves applications at the first meeting of every month, the first Wednesday of every month. So the person needs to get their application in, which is online, which is not difficult at all. And, but they need to get it in, a couple weeks. So for example, if they were to turn it in now, they wouldn't be selected until the first meeting in July or August. So,
Well, that's the beginning of a new term anyway. So.
right.
Okay.
So yes, reach out and touch someone. Not literally, because you could probably get in trouble for that, but you know what I mean.
Okay, well, at the next meeting, we'll need to have an election of officers. And I know Dick Ruffin has volunteered to be chair. Don't know that
Do anything
anyone
to
else.
get out of being secretary.
Give up your job as secretary. I certainly appreciate the work you've done in that regard, Dick.
And then we have Ann Oliver as, what position were you interested in, Ann?
Secretary.
You're muted, Ann.
Still muted.
All right, there we go. Oh, the secretary, I'd be happy to take that position.
Ah, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, see, there you go.
Well,
All
thank you,
right,
Ann.
Ann. Okay. So,
Ron, what about you?
all right, we just need someone else, and let's get some more members, because this is an important, you all heard about the VOR, the Village of Rivanna. They all resigned.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's too bad. I think it'll lay low for a while, and then probably, I think Supervisor Price will reach out and hopefully we'll see what happens, but I know a couple people are still on there.
Is there any further business to come before us tonight?
He usually gives us a little update on some projects.
Ooh, well, I was not at the last meeting. That's because a week ago, what was it, 2 weeks? A week ago Wednesday, I had a lower lobe removed. So yeah, I had cancer in one of my lungs, and so I had that removed, and the lymph nodes around it all proved negative for cancer. So everything's going well. I walked a mile today. I'm feeling good.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Good to hear that.
Yeah,
Glad to hear
it was done robotically, and it seems to be contained. So I'm a happy camper. I'll be able to drive at the end of the week. And so, yeah, just watch out on the road for me.
Well, best of luck to you, B. I had no idea that you were dealing with that issue, so.
This all happened in a month and a half when we discovered it, and then the operation. So it moved very quickly, but I did miss the last board meeting. So but I don't think a lot is not, other than passing the budget, of which we're very happy for. We finally got the budget passed. I am disappointed. I will tell you, I am disappointed that we couldn't get the monies for Darden Tow. That just frankly breaks my heart. It was a 3-3 vote. 3 of us wanted natural grass, and to bring it up to really a good playing, what it should be for natural grass. And that's never been done before. And 3 wanted artificial turf, which frankly, in my opinion, goes against our climate action plan. So it didn't go anywhere. Then we had the following meeting, we tried to at least expend some monies to say, okay, what can we do to upgrade Darden Town? And that didn't go anywhere either. So that was 3-3. So I'm like pulling out my hair, but I'm actually trying to think of maybe even forming a Darden Town foundation where we raise private monies to, rehabilitate those fields, those playing fields. And bottom line is SoCA wants artificial turf fields. They want a sports venue. I feel a sports venue at Darden Town would bring in hundreds of people and cars.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what everybody wanted. And there's only one ingress and egress. I see Darden Town as more of a natural setting park, next to the river and the walking trails and everything. I don't see it as a sports complex. I'm sorry if I'm wrong.
I agree.
Please
Thank
tell
you,
me.
B. Thank you for doing that, and appreciate that. That's what
Yeah, I totally agree as well.
Okay. So that's where we are. So might have to try to form a foundation or do something. That's probably the latest.
Any other issues that we want to cover?
Does Corey have any updates from the planning commission of anything? I wasn't sure what the status of the hotel on Pantops was.
Which one?
Yeah.
The one that's up by Giant, the one that's going to be the long stay one
Oh, next to the
By the
car
bank?
lots.
by the bank.
Yeah, next to the car lot, in between the car lots and Truist. Yeah, Corey.
Yeah, I don't have an update on that one, unfortunately. But the only thing I would say from the planning commission's perspective is that we are starting to move forward, as you heard tonight, with the comprehensive plan and the update, I should say. And we have a liaison to that committee. And so I'll be prepared to report back as that gets more and more momentum. And hopefully you all stay engaged and offer your insights throughout that process. So thank you.
Right. And that my understanding is the hotel is moving forward.
And they're talking about a new one on South Jefferson Parkway
Yes.
in that area that looks like a pure depression, and it's wooded and below the street.
Where is this?
On South Jefferson Parkway, as you're coming away from State Farm, and you go down in the swale and then come on up, it's at the bottom of that swale on the right.
Where
It's
all
South
those
Pantops.
apartments are being built?
Dick, you mean South Pantops, not
Yes, that's, I meant to say South Penn.
Yeah.
South Pantops. I know what you mean.
Yeah,
It is quite a dip.
yes,
And then there's the one behind Guadalajara.
yes.
Really?
Yes.
There's a small one there.
Pardon?
I was just saying, I agree. Yes, I've seen that location.
Right. So, and I will say, you know, Pantops, 29 North and 5th Street Extended, those are the development areas. So you're going to get development there. Frankly, I'd rather maybe see a hotel rather than a bunch of apartments, because the apartments, the people are there all the time. The hotel, they come and go. So it doesn't have the permanency that, you know, someone living there all the time would have as far as traffic, I think.
Do we have any updates on how the expressway figure eight is going and when they think that might be finished or anything like that up there at 64 and 250?
Yeah,
How that's process moving on?
Right, the diverging diamond,
Yeah.
that should be finished. I think that's scheduled to be finished by the end of the year, beginning of 2023.
B, do you know when the micro transit thing's gonna start? Do you have any idea?
No, they've applied for funding. So I don't think they've gotten their funding yet. If they get their funding, then maybe toward the end of the year. And by the way, I'm on the Regional Transit Authority, and we have been pushing for electric buses and smaller buses on the school bus side and on the, you know, public side.
Yeah,
to be
that's
able
good.
to, yeah, get around better. So
I have a, go ahead.
Can anybody have any knowledge of what is being planned or thought of by whoever owns that enormous property along State Farm? I mean, between State Farm and where the bank on the west side, there is probably a couple hundred
Well,
acres.
the hospital owns a chunk of that. They own the corner.
They own the corner on the west side of State
South
Farm.
Penn. Yeah, yes, yeah.
Ah, okay.
and
Oh, I was just wondering, what you were speaking about Darden Tao and Soka. Will the community have any input on that?
as far as
As far as them, Soka putting a complex?
no, right now it's dead. It's dead because we voted 3-3. Anytime the board votes 3-3, the motion doesn't go forward, either pro or con.
Oh, good. Okay. All right.
So,
I was really concerned about that because 20 is already a very, I mean, it's only one lane.
I know.
And then there are 1, 2, 3, 4 subdivisions at that intersection. A complex, that would be, I don't understand how that would even, well, the infrastructure wouldn't support it, basically.
And that's what I said. And I mean, I'm all for Soka. I'm all for kids. I'm all for playing fields.
Yes.
I'm all for activities. We just need to find the right location for something like that. The best place for a sports complex is somewhere near the interstate where there's easy ingress, egress.
Yeah,
But
and away from residential area, because that's a lot of people, a lot of noise, and it just, you know,
lights.
lights and so forth. Yes.
Right. I agree. That's why I voted no.
Thank you.
So if you see my little body on the road somewhere because they ran over me, I don't know why.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, I suggest we close. Thank you, Carolyn, for your help with the meeting. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you next month.
All right, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Hey,
night,
hey,
all.
great job. Great job.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
as always.
Thank you.